Well, here we are starting a new series today about the traditional text of the first and second century manuscripts versus the critical type text of the fourth, and fifth century, maybe 400 years later. Let me just say this as an introductory. On this channel, if you have not already availed yourself to them, I have made 31 videos from Matthew to Revelation, discussing inspiration and preservation of the scriptures. And on my other channel, Monarch Bible Ministry, that's Monarch, like the butterfly, Monarch Bible Ministry. I have over 100 videos, beginning with where we got the Bible all the way to the translators. And there are other videos on there with some of the names of God, which I'm trying to move over to another page. But there are over 100 videos on that channel. And so today I want to be talking about the ancient manuscripts, the traditional text from the first and second century. Now, I know some of you may disagree with that, but the evidence agrees with the teaching of the traditional text, the Byzantine type text. These texts, these copies from the originals in the first century, these copies were made on papyri or papyrus, which was very fragile piece of paper. It was very inexpensive to do that. And the reason is that it was used by the common man, especially the early church. And because of that, these being handled so much, these copies wore out very fast because they were fragile and had to be copied over and over and over again. And so that when you get to about the 9th century or the 10th century, these copies look like brand new copies because they were copied over and over again. Where you have some copies, especially of the critical type text, were on vellum, which would have been like parchment paper or some animal skin that was very expensive. And the common man did not have access to these documents. And so they were hardly ever used by the early church. The early church was using the papyrus type text. They were normally manuscripts written and printed in print. They're the most numerous that we have available, and they were from the first and second centuries. And they had to be copied over and over again because of usage and reading and preaching and teaching. Around the 9th and 10th century, when Erasmus found some of these documents, they started to print those in cursive or handwriting. It was easier to write and easier to copy and easier to separate the words. When they were printed on the minuscule manuscripts, they were just all one word right after the other. You didn't know where they ended. The cursives, that we know where the word ends because the script ends and begins a new word. Some of these old minuscule manuscripts of the first century, about 40% of our New Testament comes from these manuscripts, these early, and they are the earliest manuscripts available, unlike what you've been taught. There were foreign versions, and I'm going to mention a couple to you. They're the early Italian copies of the Byzantine type text. There are the old Latin copies. Now, don't confuse that with Jerome's Latin Vulgate. That wasn't done till about 350 or 400 AD, some 300 to 400 years later. The old Latin are around the second century, 150, 157 AD. There's the Syriac, and there are the Gothic Bibles. Now you say, well, these are in foreign languages. Yes, but they were copies of the Byzantine type text. How else do you think they got into their Bibles? They had to copy it from the words that were inspired by God and given to the apostles in the Byzantine manuscripts. And so we find that new evidence, there is no new evidence. We have all the scriptures that we need, and it's found in the Byzantine type text. Now, let me just say this. There are only two sources of manuscripts, and I'm giving you this as a very short synopsis. You can go to those other videos on Monarch Bible Ministry. They're a little bit longer. They run about 30 minutes, 25 to 30 minutes. So we have all the scripture we need in the Byzantine type text, which produced the King James Bible. And there's only one Bible that came from the Byzantine type text or the traditional text, one Bible, where the critical text, which used manuscripts from the 4th and 5th century, there's over 450 Bibles, English Bibles, complete English Bibles, 450. And so it's David against Goliath. Well, we know who won that battle. The one did. And that's where we're at today. The King James versus all the other Bibles. Matter of fact, on some of my videos over there, it says there's only two Bibles, the King James and all the rest. And that's true. You never find an ESV comparing itself to an NIV because they're the same, or the NASB, or the ASV, or NLT. They're all the same, and they don't compare to each other because they say the same thing. The only one they compare to is the King James Bible. And someone said, well, you think that's the standard? No, the scholars made that the standard because that's who they compare it to. And so there's your introduction in a nutshell. I'm sure your biased opinion, you may have some different views on that, but that's okay with me. I know where I stand and I know where the Bible stands. So the King James Bible in the English language is God's words translated faithfully for us English-speaking people. And we'll get into some of the scriptures this morning. I'm going to try to keep this around 15 to 20 minutes. I know it's a lot to take in, but you can play these over and over again. Matthew 1:7. Matthew 1:7. The scripture says, Abijah or begot Abijah, and Abiah begot Asa, A-S-A. 1 Kings 15:8. If you read that, it says his name is Asa. The critical text reads Asaph, and they say that's a variant. No, it's not a variant, because in the critical text, Asa is in 1 Kings 15:8. And so all I had to do is write it again. Some of the new modern Bibles have changed it from Asaph to Asa. I mean, they wised up a little bit and figured out, hey, the Old Testament says Asa. The New Revised Standard Version says that the ancient authorities read Asa, and they're correct. The 1st and 2nd century manuscripts read Asa, and they are the ancient manuscripts. So why does the New Revised Standard Version read Asaph? I've yet to figure that one out. I really have. When they say that ancient authorities read it, so they decided to change it. That's the only explanation that I can find out. It's not a variant. Matthew 1:10, continuing in the genealogy, Matthew 1:10. And Manasseh begat Ammon, A-M-O-N. 2 Kings 21:18. That's what it says. Ammon is the son of Manasseh. The New Revised Standard says that Um, Amos. Now, folks, that is not an alternate spelling at all. At all. Amen to Amos. But it says in this, the CT reads Amos, but it says the ancient manuscripts read Ammon. I'm not sure. I'm not sure the CT scholars, translators knew what they were doing. Um, from Amos to Ammon, that is not a variant reading, although they may say that is. It isn't. It's 2 Kings 21:18. It's that way in the critical text, and it's that way in the scriptures, the traditional text. Matthew 1:25, another famous scripture, and we talked about this on the previous video. Matthew 1:25 says, "And he knew her not till she had brought forth her firstborn son, and called his name Jesus." Now, we know that in Mark 6:3, Mary had other sons and daughters, but this one was her firstborn. The Amplified has firstborn in italics, which means it's not in the original. Well, the Amplified translator saw it there and they just decided to take it out. Apparently, they put it in italics because that's what italics means. If you're reading a King James Bible and you come across a word in italics, that means it's not in the original. And so the Amplified puts firstborn and says it's not there. Hocus pocus. We just removed it. The New Revised Standard says the ancient authorities read firstborn. Again, it's quite obvious that they know what it says, and yet they just put and born a son. And born a son. Well, she had other sons. Come on now. The New King James Version translator says that the CT reads a son. Well, we know that. You're probably looking at it if you're not reading it along with the King James Bible. That's not a variant. That's the word is firstborn, not a son. And the ancient manuscript says a son. That's the 1st and 2nd century traditional text. Matthew 5:22, another famous passage. "But I say unto you that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment." Without a cause is removed or purged or left out or not translated. 3 words, inspired words. I mean, all these words are inspired by God and preserved by Matthew, the gospel writer here. The New King James Version in their footnote says the CT omits this without a cause. It just omits it. Also, it adds brother or sister as a word. I wonder why they want to do that. The New Revised Standard Version in its footnote says the ancient authorities add without a cause. But they read it in the same verse. They read it there. The Amplified. Now, the Amplified usually puts words that aren't there or that are there in italics. Well, at this juncture, Matthew 5:22 says, "Some manuscripts insert without a cause." It doesn't say what manuscripts. It doesn't say. It just says some manuscripts without a cause. And some manuscripts say brothers and sisters, where the Greek word is just brother, singular, not brothers and sisters. You see how it gets twisted around a little bit? Now, the average Christian reading Matthew chapter 1, which we looked at the genealogy, and chapter 5, would never notice this, except if they read it in the footnotes, and they wouldn't think anything of it. Say, oh, well, I guess the King James is wrong. It's not. It's the only one that has it. All the rest don't. Or it's footnoted, or it's in italics, or it's in parentheses, or it's in the margin. How difficult is that to understand? Matthew 4:10. Matthew 4:10. Jesus speaking says, "Get thee hence, Satan. Get thee hence, Satan." Now, that could be a variant reading, because some will say, away with you, as it does in the New King James Version. It says, away with you. The Amplified, be gone. And the NIV says, away from me, Satan. That's a variant. And I understand that. And so I'm trying to show you what a variant is. The King James says, get thee hence, Satan. Now, I'm not going to argue with you about this, but it's a variant. That could be acceptable. Away with you doesn't say Satan. Be gone, it doesn't say Satan. But the NIV says, away from me, Satan. It's the only one that does. Well, that's a variant. And we'll talk about variants in future podcasts. But I'm grateful you were with me today. I appreciate it. This is our first series, but you can go back. There's 31 other videos on this channel that you can pick up some of the omitted or purged or not translated words, inspired words that have been preserved. Or you can go to the other channel, Monarch Bible Ministry, YouTube. That's MONARCH, Monarch, like a butterfly, Monarch Bible, YouTube. And there's over 100 videos there. And so I wish you would subscribe to the channel. I wish you'd leave your comments, tell your friends, and I appreciate you being with me today. And we'll see you next time. Have a nice day.